Welcome to the showcase. This is where I interview entertainers because I believe people like to know about entertainers and how they achieve their success. I make these videos for your enjoyment, and all I ask you to do is to watch, share, and like. It helps the channel grow. We can't do this without you. So please, if you can do most of those, I'd be greatly appreciated. Today's guest is I'm highly honoured because coming from Hull, and I've followed this gentleman for quite some time. Being a guitarist, I've always been interested in what he did. And he also played guitar with a friend of mine in a duo, which we'll talk about soon. I'd like to introduce Keith
How
Newby.
you doing? How you doing, Sean?
Hello, Keith. Great. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Keith. I'm really honoured for you to be on here because you're a fantastic musician. And you're a great guy who likes to entertain people. It's in your heart. So, Keith, just tell us a bit about. You told me earlier that you come from
born
Argentina,
in England.
Is that correct?
But when I was 11,
right?
Well, actually, before then, my father was in the forces first, and so I'd been to and lived in Cyprus when I was a young boy for about I think it's about 2 years, 5 till about nearly 7. But then around 11, I got oiked off to Argentina. And I stayed there for a fair few years until I came back at 16. And I was educated there in Argentine, as it were. So all Argentine kids, bring 3 of us in the whole school. One from South Africa, the other one from Canada, and me. And they insisted on taking a mickey out of me because of some notion they had of about 5 o'clock tea. Honestly, the colonials, they don't know what they're talking about, do they? That's a Canadian guy. He thought we all sat down for tea at 5 o'clock. What's the matter with that boy? Anyway, so, which meant that going through the Argentine education system, I can speak Argentine. People would call it Spanish, but good luck if you're a Spanish fella and you're going to end up on the streets of Argentina, or the other way around. Listening to the news, they speak what would be our version of the Queen's English on the news with a slight accent, obviously. Argentine is very Italian, so it's like Spanish with an Italian accent. It's get past. You've seen them all the time giving it this and this and other things. So so that's where I was raised, so to speak, formative years. And then I came back to England and stayed in the south where I was born for only a few months, and then came straight north where my dad was from, Leeds, and then eventually Hull. In fact, my very first public gig, I should have remembered this, You know when you start out and you're trying to get gigs? And I started out really late. I'm 63 now, and I didn't start out properly, on the circuit or whatever that might be called, or trying to make my own circuit until I was in my late 40s. It was really late on. I'd been playing, I've been practicing, but not as a job, or not even gigging, not even slightly. But what I should have done, I should have led with this bit of information, but I forgot. And the bit of information was my very first gig. I was 15, and it was in front of the England football team in 1977, Buenos Aires. Kevin Keegan was in that team, mega superstar. And my mum oiked me on, get on there. Slightly posher terms, perhaps, it being an embassy. That's where the gig was. And I sang Vincent. Remember that song, Vincent, Starry, Starry Night? Which my parents had, a copy of the American Pie. I didn't have that. And an Argentine song. And later on, they all came back to my mum and dad's house, the team. Because when my mum was young, before she married, she used to sing in big bands in the northeast of England, apparently. Apparently, she had a Geordie accent slightly. Well, I never noticed.
Wow.
Because being a son, I never did. So that's me. I came back to England. But as I said, I as a very young, old teenager, I suppose, or old teenager, young man, I supported, quite. I was starting to gig, long-haired, back in the late 70s, and I was starting maybe not early 70s, very early 80s. I ended up supporting some hippie type fame. If anyone listening to this knows people such as Steve Hillage and Gong, which will probably be going over most people's heads, but they're still around. I think Steve Hillage is still around. And Gong, they were mega prog rockers, clever, musicians. Anyway, I ended up supporting them. Me and another chap in Leeds University. It was and if you've ever been to Leeds University back in the day, they had a big theatre, 2-story theatre in actual fact, just a very old. It looked really old fashioned, but it's absolutely heaving, full of in those days Afghan coats because everybody was. The hippie thing was coming back again, and it stunk because it had been raining. And these Afghan coats don't do well in wet weather. And the place was absolutely chucker all the way up to the stage, and we all sat down, crossed legs, ever so, yeah, man. And there I was, 19 years old, I think I was. And we'd called ourselves Plastic Bats Drink Milk. Wasn't my idea. And we did things like John Otway, you probably may not know him, Wild Willie Barrett, Beware of the Flowers. We were kind of pseudo. My influences were probably at that time Crosby, Stills and Nash, and a bit of Woodstocky stuff. 10 years after Santana. My all-time favorite band is going to be the Beatles, obviously. I used to know every single Beatles song, and lyric, and also what the next song was on each album. I could say, this is it. Because in Argentina, when I went there, it was Beatlemania. And that was in the 70s. And it still is Beatlemania in Argentina. Yeah, that's why I started.
Did you play guitar in Argentina?
Local friends, etc. And there's a process you go through. It was only acoustic guitars, I had a classical guitar, actually. And there's this process that you go to, hanging out on what would you call them? Plazas. Do you know what plaza is? A square. No, it's a square.
Like a shopping centre. Yeah.
With benches. You see them in Spain.
Oh, right.
The lights, etc. And they hang out there, don't you? So kids will hang out and you'll have your guitar and you show off what you've learned. The first one I ever learned was, do you remember that song Misery by the Beatles? It's on their first album.
Yeah.
And then you just progress and then suddenly somebody had picked up a Deep Purple album. Can you play that? And then it was yes. Can you do this? And so on and so forth. Anyway, then I came back home, did my A-levels, dropped out of uni, and eventually got a proper job. And I didn't go back to music other than for fun until I was in my. I remember actually I had an office in Hull. I was a headhunter. I had my own headhunting business. And I was headhunting. So I was all booted and suited. People wouldn't believe it, but it's true. All ties. I never did any business in Hull. It was always all around the country interviewing people. And then one day, my missus, who's from Hull, took me to, I think it was Spring Head. I'd never been in local pubs because I didn't have time. I was a family man as well. So I was up in the morning, out, who knows where I was going, to the office, phone calling, blah, 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 or actually off on the road, interviewing people in various hotels. And then back at night time, back at home, here we are. And then during the weekend, it's family time. And it was like that all the time. So we hardly ever did the pub thing. And certainly I'd heard of the clubs. Because obviously back in the day on the TV, when I was in England, we had that, what do you call it, Shanters Club? It was a TV series, wasn't it? Used to be from up north in the northwest. They used to have turns on. Anyway, that's the one. Anyway, my missus took me to Spring Head. And I was just back in, it must have been the 90s, mid-90s. I was gobsmacked. I was like, wow. And they were really good. And then I thought, then she took me to other places. And then the question was, because I was naive. They get paid for this, right? Yeah, they get paid for it. And I'm like, because then you start measuring yourself, don't you? Because you think, I don't dare go on. Well, how good is everybody? How bad am I going to be? And then you think, I can do this. But when I started, it was, I I wasn't ready for the local scene particularly. I was too much. I was very Beatlesque and rock, and I probably needed to add some more turns to my repertoire. And to tell you what I did actually, I took myself off to night school to learn how to sequence MIDI because in my late 40s, I got a little band together. This is how I started. I I got a 3-piece band together, and we were like I think they call it a power trio or something like that. So me on guitar, a bass player, and a drummer, and they were really good. And one of the drummers still plays. He used to play in Badness actually. Anyway, these were great guys, but eventually that band broke up quite early doors, but not before I had the audacity to call up the local authorities and say, "Can we have a gig? Can we put a gig on in one of your parks?" And they said, "Okay, come and see us." So I went in there. As I say, I was still booted and suited. I hadn't gone full time yet, and there I was. And then this lady from the council just had loads of tapes and videos and CDs, and she just said, "All these also want to gig in the park, and we're going to be putting on a gig in the park, and we'd like you to organise the bands, and we'll sort out the PAs and etc." And it was called Rock in the Dock, and that was in
Wow.
Queen's Gardens. I think it was their first time they did anything like that, and it lasted a weekend. But just before that weekend, I'm thinking, of course, I'm doing it for fun. No one's paying as much, at least. I'm doing it for fun and just the sound of yourself. Anyway, the band broke up. I'm like, what? I've organised this, and now the band's broke up. This is just bad. Are we still on? Yeah, we're still right. Just my PC making noises at me. And so what I did, I had one of those really cheap plastic Yamaha keyboards, but it ran MIDI. And so I took off, and you could get rid of the guitars and the vocal, and you could muck about with it a little bit in those days, not very much. And so I plugged myself in, and I basically played songs over a guitar and sang live through a massive PA system, Santana, Deep Purple, Free, stuff like this. And then some acoustic stuff, so I could still play the acoustic guitar. It was mostly electric guitar in those days for me. And I did that in front of those people on that day, on those 2 days. And I had one of those plug-in radio pickups, for your guitar. So I got off the stage and I went into the crowd. Not because I wasn't posing. I just wanted to hear what it sounded like, and it sounded brilliant. And I never looked back. It was like, this is just great. And I'm actually playing with Deep Purple. It sounded like it was anyway. And anyway, after that, I took myself off to night school to learn how to sequence MIDI. And in those days, I don't know if you ever use MIDI now, but now it's relatively easy. But in those days, you had to write every single note. So I wanted drums and percussion. So every tap of a drum, every slightest, you had to write it in such a way that it was a nightmare anyway. But I did it. I'm dead determined to do it. And then this is again before I went full time. I still had a job, and I used to go out on a night time as what I called Rock of Ages, and that's before the theatre picked up on that name sometime. And I just did everything from AC/DC to ZZ Top. I still get people saying, "When are you going to get out the electric guitar?" As a consequence, I'm going to be getting out the electric guitar. But now I'm older and much wiser, and it's going to be slightly more sophisticated than back in those days. So that's how I started. And then one day, uh, my I was driving my MIDI, that is the MIDI backing tracks, through a quite an expensive, at this stage, keyboard, which I play keyboard. I play piano. I play piano like people strum guitars. So Hey Jude's no problem. But anything like classical, there's no. So Hey Jude and think of all the Beatles stuff and Paul McCartney stuff. Oh yeah, and a bit of boogie woogie. I can get through that. But anyway, I used to put the MIDI through that keyboard, and then one day that keyboard, expensive as it was, decided not to work anymore. And I couldn't add. It worked in the main, but I couldn't add any new tracks, and I get bored real quick. So I just couldn't go out and do the same old songs all the time. So I started to pick up the acoustic guitar more and more. I was already doing acoustic mini bit, And then I started to do fingerstyling guitar. Somebody told me about a chap called Tommy Emmanuel. Have you ever heard of him? And I had a look at him, and just around this time, I started to go full time. So I'd finished doing that headhunting, and I started to go full time, which meant that I had a really good excuse to sit on my backside all day long whilst my missus was at work and work. And my work was learning how to play that acoustic guitar in this new way. So I went through lots of his catalogue, and then
Wow.
it suddenly dawned on me that Tommy doesn't sing. And I'm thinking, and also he's very fantastic guitarist, but he's country and he's blues and kind of old fashioned blues as well. And I wasn't really. And I thought, I love all this, but I'm going to start arranging my own stuff because I want to sing over this. So his arrangements, often you can't sing over them because he's doing all the vocal bits, not just the solos and the intros. He's doing everything. So I thought, I'll do the famous instrumentals that way. Like, I think I sent you a video called Samba Pati. It's an instrumental by Santana. It was really famous. Another one I do is Albatross, which is by Fleetwood Mac. So all those, name a rock and roll or even a jazz famous has to be, top 5 for me to sit down and arrange it. It takes ages to arrange. So I went through all the instrumentals that way. But then I thought, as for the ones I want to sing, I'll learn all the intros and I'll do some flash solos whilst I'm still playing. I sent you some videos there, some of which are just the solo bit, and but I'll start singing. So I started to arrange my own, and then slowly added foot percussion to it, which in my case is a drawer, quite literally an old drawer. I had to buy the whole furniture unit, in actual fact, just to get this drawer. It was an old furniture piece. It was, and it is, pine. So it looked great, but all I wanted was the drawer, and they weren't selling me just the drawer. So we had to get the whole thing. So I put some foam underneath it so it doesn't bang against the floor, and also hardwood on the top, little hole in the side, and I put what's called a boundary mic, which for those who don't know what that is, that's a kind of microphone that is in a bass drum of a drummer's kit, and that bangs away on my left foot whilst I'm twiddling in as well on the top here. And on the right foot, I've got foot percussion, which is like 4 different types of foot percussion on there, and it's mic'd up from behind. All of this sounds great, but initially it's playing the acoustic guitar per se, live, plugged in to a PA and loud, because I play loudly. That isn't to say that I'm shouting and bellowing. I'm not, but because it's finger style, every single note has to be heard. So if you're going to do the bass
Yeah.
line, I'm known in
Uh-huh.
places in Hull, for instance, and various parts of Yorkshire for doing, let's just say something you'll know, the chain. You know that bass line that comes in? And then the solo over it, ding, 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 as the bass is going. Well, the listener and I have got to hear both of those things dead clearly. And that means that the strings have got to be loud. So I'm not hitting them very hard, particularly, but it's got to be loud. And that brings, as anybody who's played an acoustic instrument knows, that brings feedback, big feedback issues. So that took a little while to get sorted out, but it got sorted out, and now we're here where we are, and lots of all kinds of stories to get on the way.
Keith, you had a stint with when
Yes.
you had a Fleetwood Mac duo. Where tell us how that got started and why
It
you chose
started.
that.
Do you know who I was doing it with? Yeah, Lorina. Yeah.
Lorina.
So Lorina's got a lovely voice. You've ever hear Lorina? Had seen. All
I
right.
used to be in
Okay.
a duo with her many years
Wow.
ago when
Okay.
she was about
So I had
19.
seen Lorina uh, posters, Lorina's posters, where I was every time I gig, because unlike footballers or football teams, we never get to, if you're gigging, you never get to see anybody else. You're not like we're playing them
Yeah,
twice a year and
correct.
maybe in
Yeah,
the cup. That never happens. If you're gigging and they are, you just never see them unless they're in the same venue and you're on after them, that sort of thing, which is
yeah,
really quite rare.
yes.
So I'd seen these videos, and then I'd noticed her on Facebook, And I noticed that she was doing that's right, she was doing an ABBA tribute, I think, at first. And ABBA never really
Yes.
did much
ABBA
for me.
rebooted. Yeah.
But um, uh, they're great, they are good. But, but then I saw that she was doing a Carpenter's tribute. And Carpenters did lots of things for me. It was really good. I really love Karen Carpenter's voice, quite unique and lovely. So she was on at the Willows Club here in Hull, which is a large club on Holderness Road. If anyone doesn't know, that's where it is. Very large club. And she did that tribute. Now, back in those days, and occasionally even now, I smoke. Back in those days, you couldn't smoke inside. So if I ever went to see a gig, I was always in and out having a fag. And I never, in this particular gig, I didn't leave once. I just sat there, and which was rare for me because I was like, yeah, whatever, out and come back, yeah, whatever, out and come back, like you do when you've got a massive addict.
Keith, was it
Yeah,
when she was with the
they
band
had the
and the
band,
sax
that's
player
right,
and
and
everything?
she had a
Because
backdrop. She had pictures in the
yeah,
background, which was mesmerizing.
yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that
No,
as
I
well.
don't think.
Did she play drums?
Don't think so. I don't think she can play drums. I don't think she was.
Okay.
She had a wig on, obviously, because if anyone knows what she looks like, she's blonde. But she had a dark wig
Yeah.
on, and she just did a
Yes.
really good job. Anyway, that was good. I didn't really know. I'm pretty sure I went and said hello to her, just to say hello. I don't know anybody in Hull. I didn't anyway. Obviously, I do now. But
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
from here, so. And I'm mid-40s before I started to do anything that looked like this. So as a consequence, I had no one to play with. No one to play with. Sean, what can I do? No one, though. No one.
Yeah.
Me and Paddington, and that was it. Anyway, he's never abandoned me. Love him. I've actually got him up there. I'm not going to show you, but I really have. I'm childlike, not childish. Anyway, so I keep on saying. Anyway, so
Right.
move on a few years, I guess. And then I'm playing in town, and she has turned up and sat down with her husband, Barry, who's a lovely fellow as well. And that's rare because, as I
Yes.
said,
Barry.
most people are gigging. Well, I can't be bothered. And she'd come up and she wanted to do something with me. Okay. I think this is true. This is how it went. And I said, what about Fleetwood Mac? Because Fleetwood Mac, for those who don't know, the guitarist in Fleetwood Mac, the main guitarist, in the Rumours era, because obviously they've been through various variations, was a chap who played guitar with his fingers. So I thought, well, that's kind of close to what I do. And I wanted specifically to still stay strong with just an acoustic gig. We're going to do this acoustically. I didn't have my right foot percussion in those days, just the left one. So anyway, yeah, we did it. And our very first gig was, we never practiced as well. This is quite an eye opener for most people. So I practiced, and then between us, we decided what songs we were going to do and more or less what the key was. And so over over social media, just via Messenger, we decided we sent songs, etc. Mostly I had to arrange, obviously, I had to arrange all the music to it. And some of the arrangements are already tricky. If you know anything about Fleetwood Mac, there's a couple of songs that everybody wants to play if they're playing acoustic guitar. Never Going Back Again is one of them. Big Love is another. But now if you imagine doing every single famous song, and now you've got to do the bass, you've got to do the solos, all the rest of it, and make it sound passable. So it took a little while for me to get that together. But we never actually got together and practiced. She would do it her end, I'd do it my end. And then I remember just before our very first gig, which was in Cottingham, in the King Billy in Cottingham. We were due on at 9. So I'd said, look, why don't we meet up in the Duke a few hours before? I would simply just run through just to make sure the key's right. Because there were a couple of songs we weren't too sure about, but she'd learnt them, being the pro that she is, and I'd learnt them, being not as much of a pro. But, I bet if you speak to her, she probably enjoyed it, but thought it was a nightmare as well. Because I will tend to jam with myself a little bit.
Well, she put a lot of stuff on Facebook with you performing, and I thought it was highly entertaining, very, very interesting. So
she got
what finished
vocally,
that,
she
Keith?
got poorly. I think it was just before or just after lockdown. She started to have issues with her throat, which is a shame, really, because it was great. Again, I was only just getting to grips with percussion. Now I could write. What I'm doing now is apart from my normal pure percussion work, everything live, everything that you hear is me playing it. Even I have a harmonizer pedal, so I use that every now and again, which plugs into my guitar for those Simon and Garfunkel songs. But that's still your own voice again, back over.
Keith, I noticed that you've been doing some work with Goff and Davies. You've been
No, it wasn't
promoting the
work.
guitars there.
They just said, "Would you like to? Would you come and help us?" Anyone? So I said, "Of course, yeah. Come and sit down." I had no idea they were going to do what they're going to do. They were going to do some. That isn't a bad thing, by the way. But they seem to be putting it out. And I know Al from a while back. Some years ago, he lost his missus, and I did a little gig for him. And if I'm not gigging, then yeah, of course I'm going to help you. What do you want? So I didn't know he was going to give me electric guitars though. So I was like, oh wow! And he plugged it,
Yeah,
and he plugged me
you
into
played a few.
I think it was a Vox, and I hadn't played electric guitar in years, um, years. In fact, the last time I
It's
played
very
electric
different.
guitar,
Yeah,
I did a song called Parisian Walkways because they said, "Oh, please do Parisian Walkways." Now I do it acoustically, and that is hard.
Gary Moore.
Um,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
just stood there with a backing track in a pub. Literally, this is how bad it was, or how embarrassed I felt about it. I was literally playing with that one finger and a nail because the backing track does everything for you. All you got to do is ding, ding, ding. And I realized
Yeah,
where all the work goes when you learn
yeah.
to play the electric guitar. Do you know where it is? Do you know what part of your body carries the most work when you're playing the electric guitar? Rock guitar, particularly. Let me tell you, boys and girls, way back home. Well, let me tell you,
Never
because
been
I can
asked
tell
that
you.
before.
It's the face. If you're not pulling those
Oh
faces,
yeah,
mate, you ain't playing it right, obviously. And I realized that, and I thought, I feel embarrassed. And I'm not going to do that. I can't do that, especially. And it was quite a sedate setting, relatively speaking. Back in the day,
oh
everyone's going
dear.
nuts, including me. Yeah, maybe. But I was embarrassing. Anyway, but that electric is coming
Oh
out again. And
yeah,
because now that I've learned how to use my face and
good,
gurney in the correct way,
good,
we can get some beats moving.
good. So tell us what the
I obviously
future is
don't
for
know that
Keith
because if I did,
Newby then.
but what I'm planning
Right?
on, so in other words, I don't know if I'm going to die tonight. I might do. I've got because I'm a professional. I make a living from playing music, and when you do things like that, it's probably a good idea to have more than one what is called product offering.
Yes.
Um, if you ever see my latest adverts, they basically say that I'll do all kinds of music from Latino to which I do, and I've had call to do jazz, Latino settings, country settings. I'm more known for a massive variety. That is true, generally speaking. But I also
Good.
do,
Yeah.
as in the case of Fleetwood Mac, but I'm also doing tributes. So it turns out I can do a very, very passable Neil Diamond. Because when I came back from Argentina, and moved up to the north. I was about 16-ish, and I got a job. I was doing my A-levels, and I got a job in ABC Leeds. And that film came on. Everyone knows which
Wow.
film I'm talking about when it comes to Neil Diamond, the jazz singer. And if you're working in the cinema as an usher, you get to see them a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And before you know it, you're imitating his voice a bit. And that was when I was a kid. So I could always do
Yeah.
it. It's just how to do it over a microphone setting because that's a whole different set of fish. So I can do that. And if you ever, anybody down there comes to see me play, they all ask for the likes of Forever in Blue Jeans. And I just love that particular album. And also he used to have a double album, live album, famously called Hot August Night, which was the first one when he was keeping the promise of forever being in blue jeans, boys and girls at home, which he clearly went and broke, did he not? And started putting spangles on. But so I really love his voice. It's great. So I do that. A Paul Simon tribute as well. Creedence Clearwater. I learned how to manipulate my voice. But I tell you how, actually, from paying attention, really, I suppose you'd say. I've got one friend who's a professional sound engineer, and he's called Steve McManus. There's a shout out to him. And he did live engineering for famous people. One of which was one of my heroes, I suppose. Or, everyone's got, oh, I like that, I like this. Well, I've got a few of them, and one of them is Art Garfunkel. Not Paul Simon. I love Paul Simon playing, the rest of it, but Art Garfunkel's voice is phenomenal. And
Right.
when you learn how that's mic'd up and how professionals use their voices, that it's mostly wind and very little throat, then you learn these things, don't you? And as a consequence, because as it turns out, at the other spectrum, Little Richard is also my hero. So that's completely different. You'd call him a shouter, I suppose, a bit of a belter. And then obviously various things in between. So I learned over time to manipulate my voice and not lose it, not lose the voice. 6 hours yesterday, for instance, as I said, I had a 6-hour gig. And so as a consequence, that enables me to offer up different things and quite strange things.
So Keith, how do people book you?
Him, Dano. Just get me on Facebook. Get me on Facebook.
Yeah.
But you'll be seeing lots of things on Facebook. You're going to start seeing lots of electric guitar, lots of different things, and proper live performances. I got used to people because of the way I play the acoustic guitar, and it's quite unique, I guess. Lots of people want to video me. There's always and there's never a gig where someone hasn't got a video in front of me. And this goes on, talking, he's looking and doing this. So at first that used to bother me tremendously, although I never said it. Because I'm, terrorist. Oh my! I need the wardrobe. Where's my wardrobe? When moments like this, it's going to sound and look awful. But eventually, you just get used to it. And I never like the idea that it's going to sound like a tranny radio, because they all do, don't they? This is us at such a Reading Festival. It sounds like it's coming off an old tranny radio. It's awful. But you just get used to it. And but now I'm gonna be getting it properly recorded, but live. So people can say, oh, this is literally what happens. Oh, that's what he's doing with his foot. And it's going to sound as if you're in the room as opposed to a tranny radio. So there'll be lots of that, lots of different things going on. I get called away to do demonstrations quite a lot. Lots. And I've got loads of stories. I almost did a tour with one of the first promoters of the Beatles just before the lockdown because of that. But anyway, this is what it is. I noticed you had the Fab Four on the other day. I had a look at that video.
Yeah, I did the bootleg Beatles. They're actually looking for a Paul McCartney.
Really. Bass player, isn't he? Going to be left-handed probably as well. And also, I think I'm a bit too old for him. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know. Well,
Keith, we're coming to the end of the podcast because what you've been talking about is absolutely awesome, and I would like people to know that if you're a booker and you want a self-contained guitar vocalist that's got a huge repertoire, Keith's your man, and is highly entertaining, very talented. And any international bookers, that are looking for somebody to sit there and play piano for a long time, call him. He's on Facebook and his name is Keith Newby. That's Newby. Easy to find. If not, you can look on YouTube and you'll find Keith Newby as well. And what I'd like you to do is when this video is live, I'd like you to comment to Keith and he'll have his videos on there and things like that. So I'll also put his links to YouTube on here and anything like that. So if you've got anything you want to say to Keith or any memories that you've got of Keith and you want to comment on his playing, I'm sure he'll be highly delighted, and that will help his algorithms on YouTube to help him grow. So, Keith, last words from you.
I don't know what can be the very last words. I hope everybody, peace and joy, Rose. And if you're learning to play the guitar, just remember this: you're never too old. I didn't learn to do really, really tricky guitaring until I was, as I say, I was in my 50s, maybe even mid 50s, and so here I am now.
Well, that's great advice. So a lot of people want to learn the guitar, even if you're 40
remember, whatever
no
you're
age
learning,
limit for
here's a
playing the
best
guitar.
tip from your Uncle Keithy. Learn slowly. If you want to learn it, that is. If you're not
Slowly,
can't be
not
bothered to learn, just go as fast as you can. See how you get on. But otherwise, nice and slow, everything, and then your learning curve will be so much less steep.
I suppose everybody wants to pick up the guitar and play it within a month, don't they? And it's just not feasible. You know, you've got to practice 30 minutes a day just to keep your fingers exercised and things. And, you know, you've been practicing. So how many nights a week are you working at the moment, Keith?
Sometimes, well, I didn't say it. I got,
wow.
So anyway, so last week was 5. So I assume it's everybody wants to get bigger and less. Bigger gigs, less often, please. Thank you very much. So if you're out there, if you're listening,
more money,
and you can grant me that wish, can you please do that real quick? So bigger gigs, less and less of them. So a bit like the Beatles that you had on the other day.
Okay. Are you prepared to travel, Keith, to like
anywhere
West Yorkshire and things like that?
Gone all over the country, in actual fact.
Oh, I'll put you in touch with a real good friend of mine, an agent called Steve Love.
Yeah, Steve Love.
Some real nice
do it, please do, Steve.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah.
Listen, Steve, you're my only hope.
We will do.
Hope he won.
I'm sure he's not. Keith, it's been absolutely delightful talking to you. Thanks for coming on the show, and I hope things transpire and people watch.
Yes, and I hope you get lots of hits on this.
Promotion. That's all I can do. Smash
Bye.
it. Thank you, Keith.